This is just a pre-warning to people who do or have suffered from self-harm. This episode contains triggers, so please be wary. I believe that sharing all aspects of mental health is important to stop stigma and increase awareness. So I don't believe in restricting the age, but use your own initiative of sharing it with certain people. I hope you find it interesting and informative. Hi guys, my name's Dan and welcome to Mental Health Monday on Plus Us 2. So today I'm going to do a pretty serious episode on self-harm. I mentioned before in previous episodes that I've got a history with self-harm, and I'm going to talk in detail about how it affected me and the people around me. I'm going to talk about different misconceptions as well with self-harm, because there's so many kind of stereotypes, so many just errors in how we perceive it. First misconception is when people think of self-harm, they just think cutting. First misconception, it is not just cutting. You can have physical pain inflictions like cutting, burning, scalding, etc. But you can have other forms of self-harm like excessive damaging behaviours to your body and putting your body through unnatural strains, like an unnatural amount of exercise which damages the body, extreme drink and drug use, and also eating disorders. Obviously eating disorders come under their own subheading in mental health, and I can obviously see why. But they're still, if you have an eating disorder, you're still causing your body excessive damage and self-harming to an extent. If you still don't believe that eating disorders are a form of self-harm, think of it like this. What goes through somebody's head if they are self-harming through pain-inflicting behaviours like cutting, burning, scalding, etc.? And what goes through somebody's mind if they have an eating disorder? After reading and talking to people who suffer from eating disorders, what a lot of them told me is that they're not trying to kill themselves, but to simply disappear. What was going through my head when I was self-harming is that I wasn't trying to kill myself, I just couldn't cope with life itself and something needed a change. That is misconception number 2. We are not trying to kill ourselves by self-harming. I know you might not agree with me with some of this stuff, and I know that everybody's different and thinks different things. And, well, every different time that I was self-harming, I had a different reason for self-harming. And that is misconception number 3. It's not as simple as having depression to cause you to self-harm. It can be many, many different things. The first time I self-harmed, I was only 13. I was very lonely at that age, and my depression had just started. I was ashamed to have depression because I had a really good upbringing and a loving family and everything. And so I thought that not showing emotion, being indestructible, being tough would make me the strongest I could possibly be. But it all just kind of bubbled out. No one saw how much I was struggling, and I was a master at just wearing a mask. And when I was alone, I used to scratch my arms with sharp bits of metal, but they were only shallow scratches at that time, and I just blamed them on my cat. I did this until I was about 14 when I started drinking, and then at 15 I started taking codeine, and drugs became my new form of self-harm. I felt trapped in my own brain, and as an addict I always did it to excess. I had a massive ego, but I hated myself at the same time. And at the same time period, I was self-harming through extreme exercise as well and not eating. I would never have breakfast or lunch. I'd have a small dinner. I'd be going to the gym about 3 times a day, 6 times a week. And if I didn't do all of those days and all of those times, I'd lose my mind a bit. Yeah. When I introduced legal highs into it all, I had a seizure, and yeah, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I hated how I thought, I hated how I looked like, and I hated what I stood for. So when I went off to college, I chose to completely start again, and I removed nearly all my friends from my life. I I felt abandoned though, even though I had abandoned everyone else, and I felt guilty about it all. But with my giant ego, it didn't fit in, so I just continued to bottle everything up. I made friends quickly at college, but well, things were good. But then alcohol always showed my true colours, and it always made me either violent or depressed. The first time I self harmed at college, I cut a hole in my leg with a Stanley knife, and the only reason why I did that was because I missed my old mind and I missed my old friends, even though I hated it all at the same time. At this point, I started to twist and distort what the old me was like, and I used to almost worship him until he became a second side of me and lived in my mind. This second side of me was obsessed with inflicting pain on others, self-destructing, and just tormenting others. It had a giant ego, and it was a master manipulator, so it could just get into your head. In my psychologist sessions, this second side of me like got called Dan Black after the one of the personalities of the split personality sufferer Eve White, who had a second side of her named Eve Black. The second side of me became more dominant until nearly all my thoughts were controlled by it. I heard it almost as a voice, but I could distinguish it as not real. In the end, I started self-harming by burning my arms really quite badly, as an almost a control mechanism. So, because I knew if I did that, then the voice would quiet down a bit. Well, I think that completely discredits misconception 3, which was that there's only one reason to self-harm. Simply because I've had so many different reasons to self-harm. I do realise now that they were all made from distorted logic. There's one final time period where I was self-harming a lot that I haven't talked about yet, and that's when I had my chronic pain. I don't think I've talked much about it because it was the worst experience of my life. It was the most pain I've ever experienced, and I've broken my wrist 4 times, my ulna, my humerus and my ribs. I'd prefer to break all of those bones again at the same time than ever experience that chronic pain. I was put on a cocktail of different medications to try and stop it, with each one having progressively worse side effects, which included insomnia, depression and suicidal thoughts. At some points the pain got so extreme that I would shake uncontrollably and it looked like I was having a seizure, but I was fully conscious. Imagine suffering a migraine, but 10 times as bad. If you move, you're in pain. If you look at light, your brain and your eyes melt and you scream. And if you eat, you cry. During this time I was also addicted to codeine, morphine and tramadol at the same time, and I was forced to detox. I was severely cutting and burning my arm just so I wouldn't have pain in my head, just so I'd have worse pain somewhere else, just for that split second, and just to kind of dampen down the pain in my head. And I was a day away of walking in front of a bus before I was put on the right medication. When people talk about self-harm online, especially on social media, the term attention seeking comes out a hell of a lot. I absolutely despise this term because of the connotations surrounding it. When people hear it now, people think uh, he or she is not serious. If you're gonna like do anything, you're not gonna tell anybody. You're not gonna show anybody. And this is bullshit. If the only reason someone might be doing it to attention seek, but not in the way that gets kind of perceived online. The way that they're doing it is to actually try and find somebody who can connect with them emotionally on an emotional level just before it's too late. And nowadays, if somebody is like does go onto social media or anything to try and find that last bit of hope, nowadays they are only greeted by hate and just verbal assault. I'm not talking about it anymore because now you know where I stand on it, and it pisses me off to the next extreme. People who self-harm often focus on one single part of their body. For me, it was my forearm. It was all on my forearm with the one exception of the one time on my leg. To be honest, I don't know why that is, to be honest. For me, I don't know. I think the reason it was my left forearm was because I'm right-handed and it was easily visible. Yeah, I said easily visible. Uh, I I wanted it easily visible, I think, to kind of almost punish myself again. Because every time I saw it, it would bring back everything. Um, the scars are still there, but they've healed really well. They're still quite visible when it's cold, but they've healed well because of one thing, and that is bio oil. It helps so much. That and moisturiser. So, if you want to get rid of scars, take note. The final thing I want to talk about is how my self harm affected my friends and my family. I remember the first time my mum saw the cuts and the burns on my arm. It was the same time period I had my chronic pain. I remember I was on my last strand of hope before giving up with the chronic pain, and I agreed to do a full body acupuncture. I remember me and my mum, we were sitting in the car waiting for the appointment time. I was wearing black trousers, black t-shirt, black hat, black sunglasses and a black trench coat just to kind of remove as much light as I possibly could because I was in so much agony. I remember my mum crying her eyes out and asking me why I did it, and she was just trying to understand. Every answer I gave was a yes or no, or was just silent. I think, well, I don't know what the correct answer is, and the correct question is in that kind of situation. It, I think it is the most difficult time for communication. And, well, my mum was, yeah, she was crying her eyes out. I wanted to just get out of the situation, comfort her, and just kind of escape all at the same time. And yeah, it was horrible. At the same time, my dad simply just didn't know what to say. My friends weren't much different. They they simply didn't get it. They either try to comfort me with cliches, which seems to just make things worse in those time periods, or they simply ask me not to do it. This episode was really tough for me. It was the toughest so far by an absolute mile. I totally see that this is possibly one of the hardest topics to talk about because we feel vulnerable to ourselves and we almost have to relive the past. But the only way that we are going to stop stigma, remove the stereotypes and misconceptions, is if we talk about it together. If you feel confident enough to talk about it, I would absolutely love it if you could give me a Skype call. you can message me on the Facebook page, which is +us2, or you can email me at gmail at plusus2.mentalhealth@gmail.com. If you don't want to chat, but you do want to share, you can either send it in writing to the Facebook page or to my email, or you can send it in via a video clip to either of those again. So that's my time for today, but I hope you enjoyed the episode, if that's the right word to use. Don't forget to rate, comment and subscribe. And please remember to share these videos with people who might find it interesting. Please don't hesitate to drop me a message or leave me a comment in the section below. You can message me on the Facebook page, which is +us2, or you can email me at plusus2.mentalhealth@gmail.com. And please also check out the Sane Mental Health charity website, which is sane.org.uk. They're doing great work, and I would love it if you could show them support with a Stop Stigma wristband. I also have one final bit of news. The +us2 blog never really took off, but I have now made a +us2 website, which I think is a little bit better. You can get to that at www.plusus2.jimdo.com. Anyway, in some bizzles.